Hey everybody, it's your friend Adam. I'm here talking to Garrett. I talked to Garrett briefly from a chat on another live stream about objectivism. I've been going round and round, obviously with my audience and with PSA Sitch on our weekly podcast about objective morality. So I'm super interested in this idea of objective morality from an evolutionary psychology perspective. So I'm just talking to different people about that. Garrett's an objectivist, and I'll just go ahead and let you introduce yourself, Garrett.
Yeah, what's up? I'm Garrett. I'm another YouTuber. I talk about objectivism, Ayn Rand's philosophy a lot. I have around 300 subscribers, so not very big yet, but hopefully in the future I'll get growing a little bit more, and I'm hopefully this conversation helps me out a little bit too. But
Well, I'm happy
we'll
to
see. And
throw a link to your channel in the description so people can check it out. And I'll post it on my main channel too as well, since that's where I usually post the stuff that's like philosophy oriented. So I'm curious, and one of the contentions that I have with a lot of the people that I'm talking to about objective morality is they're conflating objective and universal. So I'm curious, are
hmm,
objectivists moral realists? Do they believe in objective morality?
yes, but hmm. So it depends sort of what you mean by like a moral realist. Objectivism is interesting in the sense that we don't think morality exists apart from human beings, but it's also not some it's like it's objective in the sense that it's an interaction between a human being and reality. So like values are objective in the sense that they are a requirement for our life. So they don't make sense apart from a valuer. But they're also not something that exists necessarily out in reality, but there's something that's real. Like there's something that so like if I want to live, I have to take certain actions. I like a analogy that I like to use relating to this is kind of like a diet. There are for each individual person, each person has a different sort of requirements for their diet. So there's certain things that I need to eat that's different from other people's certain things that they need to eat. Um, but there's like an objective diet that's the best thing for them to follow. But there's certain different things for each individual
So
person based on their life.
are there moral facts? A lot of times moral realists will say there are such things as moral facts.
Yeah, I would say there are moral facts because there are certain objective requirements for your life as a human being. You have to take certain actions to sustain your life.
Okay. So do you believe can you give your definition of
Oh,
morality?
you
What
cut me off.
definition? Can you hear me now?
Yep, for
Can
sure.
you give
Sorry.
your definition of morality? Like what definition of morality are you using?
Um, Basically, the definition that I would use is basically what sort of value should you pursue to continue living and live a life as a human being, a life of happiness, a life of productivity, of pride, all these sort of things.
Okay, and are those values universal? Should every single human being adopt those values?
Um, in general, there's certain general requirements that every human being has to have. However, there are differences between individual humans, like a diet, that sort
Right.
of thing.
Right.
So there's like general principles, like you want to be a productive person, you want to have a central purpose that you're striving towards, you want to take pride in that. But there's different requirements for that. Like some people want to be like an architect, for example. Some people want to be a mathematician, and they're different requirements for different people. And for certain people, those certain things won't make them as fulfilled as other people. But these are still objective. Like I should objectively be like I like mathematics, so I should objectively become a mathematician rather than a painter, based on my requirements for
Uh,
living and the sort of things that I'm interested in.
the way that I'm defining morality in a very specific way. So you're kind of giving examples of things that would fall outside of that. I'm defining morality as like interactions between human beings. And like whether or not you like mathematics is not necessarily going to affect how you interact with other human beings. So I'm defining morality as a set of rules that binds individuals into a cooperative group. I have a very
Hmm.
specific definition for it. So when I was in the chat hazing your moderator in the other debate, I was saying that through this very specific definition, you can gain moral facts. You can discern moral facts through sort of an algorithmic type way. And not many people are talking about objective morality are really talking about it this way. They're kind of examining individual claims and trying to discern whether or not those claims are good. But in the way that I'm looking at it, you really have to examine it as an entire system. So that's a huge difference. I don't necessarily know if objectivism, it's funny that it's called objectivism because I don't know that it is objective morality.
Well, I mean, it's sort of how do you define objectivity? What does it mean for something to be objective?
Independent
Objectivism
of
is
human
not.
minds.
I don't. That's what I would define as intrinsic. That's not the way that Rand would uses the term objective. Rand uses the term objective to mean sort of an interaction between the mind and reality. Like when we could go down to like just like she initially defines it in the level of concept formation.
So
with this whole idea that we form things based on our requirements.
Well, that's
and it's
fine.
based on reality, and it's like objective in reality, but it's also an interaction between the two.
That's fine. I'm trying to get. A lot of times these discussions bog down in definitions where you're using a term objective and really you mean universal. I'm using the term objective to mean objective. So that's the only reason why I'm bringing it up. So
I don't know if I'm using it to mean universal here.
Well, there's another thing that came up in our discussion, which is really the meat of what I wanted to talk about, because I feel objectivism as a moral philosophy, and you're pitching it as a moral philosophy, has an intrinsic flaw in it that makes it impossible to actually be a moral philosophy, because morality, by the definition that I'm using, a system of rules that binds people into a cooperative group.
I mean, that sounds more like politics to me. Like when I think of ethics, I have a different view of what ethics means or what morality means. Morality is just simply telling you what should I do.
Politics is about morality.
Yeah, no, it's based on morality. It's obviously based on morality, but politics is sort of the branch of philosophy that's saying how groups should interact. And ethics I view as just how should I act? How should I as an individual act? That's my fundamental way of looking at ethics.
But act towards it. Only acting towards other people, though. Like if whether or not you paint your house red or orange doesn't, like that, there's no ethical component to that.
I would say that there is, actually. That's Rand's sort of unique view of ethics. Ethics is about the individual. It's not about it includes other people, obviously, since we interact with other people, but it starts with the individual, because we're individual people who have to make individual decisions for ourselves. So that's the primary there. And then after that, we can say, okay, how should I as an individual interact with other people? And generally through trade would be Rand's argument. But we start objectivist ethics starts with the individual, because that's where experience starts. That's where life exists. There's only individual lives. There's only individual minds that make decisions.
Yeah, but they're making decisions within a group that has certain rules of adherence, which are ethics. Those are the ethics, the rules of the group. That's why I bring it up.
No, that's not how I think of ethics. Ethics starts with the individual. It's the question of what should I do. I think we're not going to get anywhere if we have this different view of ethics fundamentally. Like, you're looking at it as what sort of rules should we have between individuals, but I'm more interested in trying to figure out what should I do about my life. Like I think that's what the definition of ethics ought to be. Just how, like, because it starts with the individual. You only individuals make choices, and that's what ethics is about. What choices should a person make?
Okay. If you make choices, though, that don't affect other people in any way, shape, or form, how are those choices ethics? How are those choices related to ethics?
Because they relate to your life. They relate to your requirements for living. So, like, I mean, you gave the example of which color you should paint your house.
Well, that's
not a super important example, but it's still an ethical question.
It's a bad example because that actually does tangibly affect other people. It affects your neighbors. I kept trying to think of an example that doesn't affect anyone whatsoever.
Sure.
But
I mean, let's imagine you're on a desert island. You still need ethics in that context, because
I would argue that you don't. You don't need ethics.
Well, then what do you do then? Do you not act? Like, how are you supposed to live on that desert island, apart from having a foundation of, like, what should I do? Like, you wait, let's say you're alone on a desert island. Now what? Do you go to go make a fishing pole and go fish, or do you go pick coconuts and smash the coconuts? Like, which you have all these decisions to make, and we need some foundation on which to guide them, and that's what Rand would argue is ethics.
Right. Okay. So we fundamentally disagree about what ethics are. In order for me to make an argument for objective morality, I'm defining morality in a very specific way. You're defining morality in a completely different way. You're defining morality as how should I behave? It has nothing to do with other individuals. It has
like what
to
choices should I make?
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's related to other individuals because we live in a society,
why?
obviously. But what?
So what is the relationship to other individuals?
Well, like when there's other individuals and they can benefit my life in certain ways through trade, through giving me knowledge. Like we have a whole foundation of knowledge throughout all of history, like all of science, all those sort of things. So I can look at that knowledge and integrate it for myself with my broader context of knowledge and concepts that I've discovered. So that's one.
So is it about the individual or is it about the group?
About the individual.
So it's only about the individual?
Yes, because I mean we're the only people that can make choices and can experience our lives and experience our positive states of consciousness in life.
Right, but if you make choices, the group has some sway over you. I mean, you could be incarcerated for the choices that you make. There's certain laws that you have to adhere to.
Yeah, I mean that comes after ethics, though. That's about politics. I mean, like
politics
this
is
interesting because
how is politics not ethics?
It comes after ethics. Politics just says how should the group be structured, how should the group be organized, or when we're interacting as a group, should we have a government? Like, what should the purpose of that government be? What sort of rights should a human being have? And ethics comes before that, because before that you need to know what a human being ought to do, how a human being ought to live, and what sort of decisions a human being ought to make.
So tell me, is objectivism? So objectivism is moral relativism? No. What is objectivism?
Objectivism is objective morality. It just says that.
So it is objective morality.
Yes.
Is it
but it's based
universal, or is it objective? Like for instance, the height of a building is objective, but it's not universal.
I would say it's more objective in that sense, because it's not universal in the sense that every human being ought to act the same way.
Okay, so it is objective. So there are moral facts. Like we could say, murder is wrong. That is a fact. That is a moral fact. What makes that a moral fact in the same?
So I'd say murder is wrong.
So what makes that?
There's context when it's okay to, but
what makes murder by definition is wrong? What is the context for murder is wrong in the same way that the height of the building has a context that we all agree upon a measurement for buildings? We can measure it in metric. We can measure it in good old American. There's a number of different ways we can measure the building, but you and I can come to an agreement. We're going to measure it in feet, for instance, and we can agree that that building has an objective measurement, not a universal measurement, but an objective measurement. What is the measurement for murder is wrong? How do we know that that's a fact, that an objective fact, independent of our human minds?
I mean, wait, you can't say that. You can't say independent of our human, like there has to be.
Is the height of the building independent of our human minds?
Measuring it isn't. Like you have to have a human mind to measure the building, and it's similar with ethics.
We come up with a context to measure it. Yes, we do. Mm-hmm. Alien life might come up with a different context to measure it, but is the height of that building objective? Let's say it's the Empire State Building. Okay.
Yes,
a specific building.
It has a height.
That is objective, however we decide to measure it.
Yes.
Okay. It's the height of the building is outside of the human mind. The measurement system that we agree upon may be an agreement between us. There is a subjective component to it, right? We have to come to an agreement on it.
I mean, we don't, like, you can still measure a building without coming to agreement on.
Well, once we come to an agreement, isn't it somewhat objective?
If I'm on a desert island and there's a tree that I want to measure, I can still do that measurement without coming to an agreement with another person.
Well, why would you need to, if there's not another person to come to an agreement with, There would be no.
Why would you need to measure it? I mean, you still might need to do things with that tree. Like, let's say you want to build shelter, so you can cut down the tree, do a measurement, and see, like, there's this specific length, and I want to build a house this way. So, like, you still would need a measurement, and you need ways to, like, the purpose of measurement fundamentally is to relate different things to a common
different person
measure, to a common standard in your mind. So then you can compare different things. So, like, I can compare the length of, I don't know, like my phone and this mouse without holding them up to each other. I can just say, like, oh, I have a separate standard of measurement. Measure my phone this much, measure this one this much, and I don't have to, like, hold them up and compare them together. I mean, that's the purpose of measurement.
Yeah, there's a big advantage to having a standardization within a group, correct?
But
that's the whole
just
purpose.
As an individual, even just as an individual, apart from a group, you don't need a group for these things to have value. And, like, what is a group fundamentally?
I'm
it's
curious,
just a collection of individuals.
What is the measurement? What is having the measurement of a building without anyone sharing? Like, let's say you came up with your own independent measuring system, and you were going to measure the Empire State Building with this measurement system of 1. What is the value of that measurement system? Your own personal measurement system.
Then you can compare the length of that with other buildings or other things.
And that's like a useful thing for you, or I'm trying to find out how this would be useful in the world. It seems like when we come to an agreement on a measurement system, and there's been a lot of controversy over even America adopting the metric system. It seems like when we come to an agreement on a measurement system, there has a fundamental utility of doing that. There's a reason that we do it. It's advantageous in many different ways.
Yeah, I'd say it's very useful to do measurements, but fundamentally it's for the individual. It's not because there's a group who it's valuable to. Who is the group? The group is just individuals who have their own values.
The group would be
individuals that have their own values and choices to make.
Well, the group would be electricians, perhaps. There's all sorts of standards for electricians, like computer scientists. There's all kinds of standards for computer hardware. There's all kinds of standards for measurements for architects. All of these groups can use those standards to collaborate effectively.
Yeah, and it's useful for that. I agree, but there's also a use for an individual as well. Just to,
but the use for the individual is being able to collaborate with other individuals.
No,
what is the use for the individual if it's not collaboration with other individuals?
It's to be able to compare two different things that are, like, without like just putting them right next to each other, or like just looking at them perceptually. You can just do all the stuff in your mind. Like, this is the foundation of mathematics.
Which is more useful, being able to compare things in your mind as an individual, or being able to work collaboratively with other individuals? Which is more valuable? Like, if you had to put a price,
be able to compare things, because that is the foundation of mathematics.
If one was valued at $1,000 and one was valued at $1, you'd say just being able to compare things as an individual is worth $1,000, and being able to compare things with other individuals in a group is worth $1. That's the value exchange you want to make.
Yeah, this is really. I'm confused. What do you mean by this? Like,
I mean exactly what I said. Which is more valuable? Which is worth $1,000 and which is worth $1? You being able to compare things as an individual, or you being able to collaborate with other individuals through some standardized unit of measurement?
Both are pretty useful. I don't know if one is that much more useful than this. This is a really weird point, and I'm confused. Like, where you're trying to go with this, because the whole purpose of creating, like, why do we create measurements to begin with? Like, it's to
cooperate with other people. To cooperate with other people. That's the entire purpose of creating those measurements. To be able to collaborate with other people.
Okay, but, like, what? Collaborate on what? What specifically? Like, to do mathematics with them?
To build skyscrapers, to build
and then it's
spacecraft, to build airplanes, to build cars, to build computer systems, to build technology, to design nations, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's only individual minds who are interacting with these measurements that actually form anything. Like, you collaborate, of course, but each individual step in these sort of things is done by an individual mind. Like there's no collective mind that like forms together as one and
There
works
is a
on this
collective
together.
mind. What are you talking
No,
about?
there's not. What does that mean?
Well,
I don't share thoughts with anybody.
When people collaborate, you don't think a movie is an expression of a collaboration. I mean, it takes thousands of people to make movies.
Sure, but what you have is like this one actor does her thing, and this other actor does their thing. They're all doing their individual things, and then you can unite that together in the form of a movie. So like the movie analogy is not the best, is not as clear as or not super clear to me, but I think a better analogy would be sort of like if you're working on a problem with scientists and mathematicians, like you delegate different things to individual people to solve those things with measurements and do those sort of things, and then later you come together and put it all together, and there's individual minds that work on these specific things. Like each individual task is done by an individual mind. There's no collective mind that comes together and does one specific task at the same time.
So if you're saying something like murder is wrong is a fact, what is the context for that fact? What's like supporting evidence do you bring to the table on why murder is wrong?
Murder would be wrong because it negatively affects my life. It is not good for me to kill another human being. It is not in my selfish interest to kill another human being.
So if we lived in a place where there was no state, or you were like a king and you could murder as many people as you wanted to and there'd be no consequences. Like, let's say murdering people was actually good for you. Then murdering people would be right.
No, it would not be in your best interest to do that, because it's better to have those people alive and working productively and trading with you than you to just kill them.
What if these people want to kill you?
Then it's perfectly fine to kill them.
Okay, so
if they want to kill you.
So if you were a king and you
in self-defense.
Well, let's say it's safer that like you don't have it's you believe that they want to kill you enough that you're killing them would be the most effective way to sleep well at night, let's say, to feel better. It'd be one less thing that you would have to worry about, let's say. So it would tangibly affect your life. Let's say, you're losing a lot of sleep. There are people that you feel might murder you. Wouldn't killing them, getting them out of the way, and you getting a better night's sleep, wouldn't that be the moral thing to do then by the objectivist standard?
No. If you're that paranoid of a person, I mean, like fundamentally, these people are more valuable to you alive. And the correct action to take there, if you can't sleep at night because you're living in this paranoia, would be to correct your own emotional state, because you have, in that sense, you have emotional problems. You're not actually looking at reality.
Well, what if they legitimately are trying to kill you, and then you're not paranoid?
If they legitimately are trying to kill you, then you can kill individual people. Because
but you don't know 100%. It's like you believe that they are, but you don't necessarily know that they are or aren't.
I mean, that's a difficult question, and that would come. That's not.
Well, how about you just lock them up, and then you don't have to worry about it because they're in prison. You're tangible.
I don't know.
Sleeping.
If there's good reason, if there's very strong reason to believe that they are going to kill you, then you have the right to use force on them.
Yeah. Okay.
There has to, like, this is not like saying, oh, like I feel like, oh, this person might kill me, but you have no real good evidence. It's just entirely whimsical. Then you have no reason to. But like if somebody's threatening you, if they're doing something tangibly where it seems like they're going to kill you, then you have every right to do so. Like if somebody put a note on my door and was like, oh, I'm going to kill you tomorrow, or something like that.
Okay.
Like I have the right to defend myself.
Yeah. Okay.
That would certainly be moral.
Okay. So if someone puts a note on your door and says, I'm going to kill you tomorrow, you should kill that person according to objectivist morality.
If there is very good evidence that they are probably going to murder you. Okay. I have. This is a tough one, and I might be making a mistake here. Like I want to be clear. I'm a student of this philosophy.
Yeah,
so things that I have to learn.
There's no wrong answers here.
Like this is a complex question, and it's very much up to the context, because like the whole question of when is it right to in self-defense, like if the person is literally like over top of you with a knife getting ready to murder you, then you have every right to murder them, because they're going to kill you.
I think self-defense, obviously, yes, you do.
Yeah,
But I'm
So I think in
just
the context of self-defense,
objectivist.
it's fine.
The problem that I have, and I'll lay out the problem that I have with objectivism and let you respond, and then maybe we're good here. The problem that I have with objectivism is I believe morality evolved as a mechanism to facilitate cooperation between groups in a very evolutionary way, like to facilitate survival and reproduction. This started at the tribe level with human beings and then kind of ratcheted up to the societal level, where bigger and bigger societies are competing against one another. And they're really competing on that set of rules. You want to call it politics. I think it's politics and ethics combined, but it's really this set of rules that binds people into a cooperative community so it can compete for survival and resources against other communities. So a lot of these ethical systems that have evolved to suppress selfishness. We evolved from apes, which are very selfish, much more selfish than human beings. And in order to suppress the normal ape-like selfishness that every human being has, we have this like cultural adaptation that is developed with us that we call morality or ethics or whatever you want to call it. Now, objectivism is based on, like, their highest ethic is selfishness. So I don't necessarily know how you can develop an ethic when it seems like most of the ethics in the world are designed to suppress selfishness and elevate selfishness as the highest moral ethic. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'll let you respond.
So because we haven't had like selfishness in the past, because we haven't, I mean, I'll try to summarize it because there is a lot there and I'm not sure if I'm actually getting it right. So because we like haven't been selfish in the past, because we haven't, like, that's not what we've been doing in the past, that means that selfishness shouldn't be considered moral, or is that, I mean, that's a very simplified answer.
Most ethical packages define selfishness as bad, and giving as good.
Yep.
Unselfishness.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not based on anything. That's not based on rationality. It's not a rational system. It's just what people have felt like, or it's just what the Christians have told them, like the Christian supreme leaders have like told to them, or throughout the very young age they were constantly developed being told, oh, give to other people. I mean, that's how they're constantly raised, and then people are like constantly told, oh, give to other people, be sacrificial, sacrifice constantly, and that they sort of autonomatize that in their subconscious, or they make it sort of automatic in their subconscious, and then over time they have these intuitions, quote unquote, where they feel like they see something happen or that's selfish and they feel like, oh, selfishness, ew, that's scary. But that's because from a very young age they've been constantly taught that selfishness is immoral and selfishness is bad.
Yeah, so but you're making a pitch. You're saying we've had it wrong. All of these moral systems that have evolved are incorrect, and we want to develop a moral system that is based on that idolizes selfishness. We want to make selfishness the core of our moral system. But I don't understand how you can build a group of people that's going to have the same attributes as a group of people that are selfless. Like if you have 20 selfless people cooperating, it seems like they're going to be a stronger unit than 20 selfish people. Well, I don't even know how you get 20 selfish people to cooperate. So,
well, what does that mean? It's in someone's self-interest to cooperate with other people. Like you get a lot of value from trading with other people. I think it's actually a lot more damaging to individual people if you constantly sacrifice to the collective, because you're just destroying your own values and you're just destroying your own desire to pursue values and your own ambition to
I'm not saying
live and
pursue
Mother
your own
Teresa
life
for the group. Like that's not the best way to ultimately get like innovations or get production, or if you want the whole like pragmatic argument for how it would work in a group. Like people are like people want to or should want to pursue their highest ends, pursue the things that they are most interested in, the things that are most consistent with their life. And that's basically what selfishness is telling people to do. That's what Rand wants people to do. Pursue your own life, pursue the things that you want out of life, rather than sacrificing for the group or sacrificing because your priest tells you that this thing is immoral, or because your politicians are telling you that this is immoral, or different people are telling you, or your mom's telling you give to charity, or all these sort of things.
So why would selfishness? Why would 20 guys who are selfish competing against 20 guys who are unselfish? Why would the 20 selfish guys outcompete in any arena of competition? Let's call it athletics. Why would the selfish people outcompete the unselfish people, the cooperative people?
I guess in athletics, I guess like the selfish people would realize what they can do right and what they can't do in this situation, because they realize that they have moral value in themselves, like for themselves, to win this competition. So then they will work together, obviously, because it's in their best interest to doing this, like winning this competition, this athletic competition. Let's say, like, I don't know, what's a game that 20 people play or are on the field.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a big sports guy,
know.
but I'm
Yeah,
thinking like in like, sports, I know that there tends to be like people who showboat, people who do most of the ball handling, like people who become the celebrities and get most of the money, and there's other players that are like the kind of fade to the background and are not necessarily. And in a competition where you have people who are giving, that seems like something that is going to be easier to take place. In a competition where you like everybody's trying to showboat, everybody's trying to get the most, maximize their participation in the game, it seems like the cooperation is less likely to take place.
Well, cooperation is different than selflessness. Cooperation is in my self-interest. Like if I'm a basketball player, and there's like two guys on me and at the last second, and I see someone on the other side of the court that's open for three, and they're like the best 3-point shooter on the team. I'm not going to shoot that shot. That is not in my self-interest to do. Even if it's like, even if it seems like, oh, I'm being selfish because I'm taking the last shot. I mean, that's what a lot of people conflate selfishness with. I would pass it to the other person, they would shoot the three, and we would make it, and we would win the game. And that is fundamentally selfish for me, because I want to win, because that's a value to me.
Does objectivism have a position on hierarchies? I know hierarchies seem to be something that plays into a lot of moral discussions.
What do you mean by hierarchies? Like certain people being at the top, like
like class distinction,
class things. I mean, I have no problems with class, as long as it's something that people get to through honest means, I guess, as long as they're not using force on other individuals. So I don't like hierarchies that are built on force, basically.
What are I'm
fine with hierarchies that are built on skill.
Right. Prestige hierarchies versus dominance hierarchies. You'd be more for prestige hierarchies, where people are looking up to people because they have some sort of skill set that people admire.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything packaged in there that I don't agree with, but yeah, I agree with it as the way that I take those terms to be defined.
Yeah. So what is the highest value of objectivism? Isn't it selfishness? I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that.
I mean, it would just be the individual's life. So selfishness is like a virtue. Yeah. I like the virtue of selfishness, provocatively titled. And I'd agree with that, because
what is the highest value of objectivism?
It would be life. That's the standard of all values. You say, like, basically it's the question of, what do I need to do to live? That's the fundamental question for every individual. Like when you are born, or not when you're born, because you can't make decisions very easily that young, but like when you get older, you have to decide, like, do I want to live? And if you want to live, then you have to take certain actions to live. And included in living is like, I mean, every action that you take generally will lead you closer to death or closer to life. Like if you shoot heroin every day, you're going to get closer to death. You're just going to be living in this sort of haze that's not actually living. So that would be fundamentally like oriented towards death. But if I want to live, I want to go and produce. I want to go and not shoot heroin and go and and find a romantic relationship and cultivate pride in myself for the things that I'm doing. Like but all these things are conducive to my life.
What is it that has attracted you to objectivism? Just out of curiosity.
What attracted me to objectivism? It's a long story. I mean, I guess I grew up religious. So, and when I kind of always took religion as like this only way of achieving happiness and living a happy life. But it was always fundamentally encapsulated in this lack of pride, this sort of idea that I should give myself, or because like pride is the worst of
Humility.
all.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and like only other people can fulfill me, and ultimately, like I had this sort of platonic idea of like, I wrote about this in my journals a lot. Like it was like other people obviously are the only people that can fulfill you because you are like inherently empty, you inherently don't have pride, and then God is like this big capital O other who's gonna fulfill you after death and like all that sort of stuff. But then what Rand did was show me that no, like you as a human being are capable of achieving your values. You can achieve happiness in this world as a individual. And that, I mean, that's what I got out of reading The Fountainhead so clearly. Like I found it was like all the positive things that I got out of religion, like the idea of like meaning and morality and those sort of things. I realized that objectivism has this, and it has pride, and it has no mysticism. So I get rid of doubt. I get rid of this lack of pride in myself, and like that's what attracted me to objectivism fundamentally. It's this whole idea of pride fundamentally.
So it allows you to be proud of yourself, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that's another thing, because a lot of the ethics packages encourage humility to suppress selfishness.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily know. I don't know of any studies. I know that there's studies on like things like forgiveness, I think is important. And there's lots of sociological studies and behavioral economic studies on that kind of thing. I don't know that there is on pride, but I'll look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the effect that pride has had on me psychologically, and I think there's, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of psychology about like the importance of self-esteem and pride and those sort of things. But also like the whole thing about forgiveness and those sort of things, humility, like those things can be a value, but that's only if they're a value to you. Like if I want to, if someone wronged me, if someone did something bad to me, it can be in my self-interest to forgive them if I realize that they honestly made a mistake, or that in the future they're not going to do it again. But if they're just going to keep on, if I'm in a friendship with someone and they just keep on doing very destructive things to me, keep on like gaslighting me, or keep I don't know, keep lying to me and those sort of things, like I'm not going to forgive that. I'm going to end that friendship and move on. Like you can't, it's not in your best interest, and it's not smart to be around other people who are bad for you, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're saying it right there. I mean, you're talking so much about the individual, but isn't your individual happiness directly related to the other types of people that you're surrounded by? And if you're surrounded by a bunch of selfish people, it doesn't seem like it seems like you would live a better life if you're surrounded by giving people than if you're surrounded by selfish people. And I don't know how many objectivists there are in the world. Okay, so you're saying if I'm surrounded by selfish people, like let's just say everyone in my family is selfish.
Actually, I should probably unpack the term selfishness here, because I think there's a lot of stuff that's thrown into the idea of selfishness that I wouldn't agree with. Like treating someone like shit, treating someone, or just like doing anything to screw other people over at all costs. That's not selfish. It's not selfish to be like a liar, a stealer, a cheater, any of those sort of things. It would not be selfish to do any of those actions. It's what is selfish is acting in my best interest, doing what is for my life. And a lot of that involved in that is holy shit. There's the light from my window is really bright right now. Holy shit. Sorry.
It's Jesus trying to tell you to turn your life around.
Yeah, Jesus is telling me don't be selfish anymore.
Yeah, there you go. I'm an atheist, so I'm not.
Oh yeah.
I'm not here to pitch for Jesus, though. I mean,
oh yeah. Shoot. Now I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh yeah,
selfishness. Yeah.
Unpacking the package deal.
Yeah.
Selfishness being.
I mean, the
so
thing.
I mean, it's like included in selfishness is this whole idea of like the values that you can get from other people, not just material values, but like spiritual values from like friendship and those sort of things. So I can gain a lot of value from friendship with other people, not spiritual in the sense of like religious spiritualism, like spiritual in the sense of just like mental values, like pride or those sort of things. And yeah, so you can gain a lot of spiritual values from other people, and it's not just like purely material, where if I can make an extra buck by screwing my friend over, that's in my self-interest. That would be a selfish thing to do. That would not be true. I would disagree with that.
So, do you have any questions for me before we wrap up here?
Oh, sure. We're done already?
Yeah, I think I pretty much understand where you're coming from. I don't agree, but I understand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like why don't you agree with me? Why don't you agree? Like what sort of perspective do you have on this?
Well, like I said, I think living in a society where people are more giving. I mean, the whole idea behind Christmas is that we once a year meditate on generosity.
Yeah, I mean, like benevolence is not a bad thing. It's not bad to give to other people if they provide spiritual value to you,
Right.
if they provide actual values to you.
If the idea with generosity is that you give to people who don't deserve it.
Well, then I would disagree with that. Why should you give? But why should you give to people who don't provide any value to you? Like if somebody constantly lies to you and is dishonest with you,
I don't think you should give to people who lie to you and are dishonest to you. But I mean, there are people that you would give to that don't necessarily have the ability to repay. That's the whole idea behind generosity.
Oh yeah, no, but that's why that's why I'm not saying like it's just purely material values that like it's not as if I'm just going to give to somebody and say, "Oh, I want you to pay me back with a certain amount of values too." No, like I find certain values from other people, from my friends. Like I'll give to my friends because I like to see them happy, or I like to make them happy, or I feel because I like the person.
Well,
I think they should feel
I don't
positive
see
emotional states.
I don't see any like empirical grounding to any of the things that you're talking about. It just seems like you're consulting your moral intuitions and kind of coming up with rationalizations for the way that you feel. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's grounded in any science or any empirical study.
What would that even mean? Like an empirical study for like what sort of empirical study would you want for this?
In my system, in my view of objective morality, I'm talking about a very empirical system, something that we study. I mean, one of the reasons we keep track of something like GDP is that we're interested in measuring the health of nations, because nations are like a list of rules that bind people into cooperative groups. So,
I view the purpose of a nation or a political system to be keeping force out of people's life so that they can self-actualize in the best way possible, or can make them pursue their life and pursue their happiness in as free of a realm as possible.
So if the state did that, kept force out of people's lives, and that state ended up producing nothing and their GDP was zero.
I mean, that wouldn't happen.
Why?
Well, I just look at history. Look at the Industrial Revolution. When people are free, we have all this innovation. Throughout most of history, we have been terrible. We've had like the Dark Ages. People have been suppressed. People have not been allowed to use their minds as freely as possible. But then once we free people up, once we allow for people to use their own minds and pursue their own happiness and pursue their own lives, we see all this innovation. We see all these great things. So it's obviously like
innovation
in the
is
nation's
important.
best interest. What?
Innovation is important.
Sure. I mean, like it's good for me that like that's why I want to protect other people's rights. That's why it's positive for me to let other people be free. Like,
so
it would be,
are you protecting people's?
It's more in my interest.
Are you protecting people's rights to get the innovation, or are you protecting people's rights? Like, why are you protecting people's rights? What's the purpose of that? That's why I'm trying to ground this in something real,
so that I can trade with them, so that I can get the innovations that they make.
Right. So the innovation is what you're after.
Yeah, for my the things that are selfish for me. That's why we defend individual rights. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just it sounds like you agree with me more than not, that you just don't like calling you. You don't like my conceptualization. Like, I can't even get you to admit that morality is a set of rules that binds people into cooperative groups. But at the same time, you're saying
that's what politics is.
Okay. So
we just have a different view of philosophy and what ethics and politics rules are.
So you're saying morality is only about individuals, and that fundamentally it's only about how you behave as an individual.
It's not only about individuals, but the primary focus is the individual life.
Okay.
That's what we need to focus on primarily. I feel like I'm talking past you right now, because I don't know.
Well, I understand your perspective, but I don't see how it doesn't seem like you're doing anything more than just grounding your morality in your personal feelings. Like I don't necessarily, you're not pointing to things and saying,
I mean, it's not grounding it in my personal feelings though. It's grounding it in what is objectively giving me the best life possible.
Okay. Personally.
Yes, for the individual. That's the primary here. The primary, like we have a different sort of conception of what the most important being in ethics is. Like you seem to be very focused on the group, while I'm more focused on like an individual life and what choices should an individual make.
What important is the group at all remotely important? Like I would say
it's an important to the individual. It's important to the extent that it helps the individual.
Right. So then it's very important.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree the group is important, but it's not the primary. A group is just a collection of individuals.
That okay. So a group is just any collection of individuals, whether or not they work together or hate each other's guts.
Yeah, I mean, we can define it like in a different way if you want. Like we can say like a cooperative group is a group of people that like interact and work together. Or like, what do you mean by
what are they? In what way? What facilitates our cooperation? Agreements, right?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that I actually agree with that because the fact that you agree that a certain type of interaction is beneficial for each individual. So each individual says like it's a win-win trade. So let's do that.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've gone on long enough. I believe I understand your position. Yeah, I think you could probably steel man my position. It seems like you understand it. You just disagree with it.
Yeah, fundamentally.
What's my position?
I mean, your fundamental concern is the way that groups interact and how groups come to certain agreements, and like how do we get to those agreements as a group, and what is the best thing for this group? What are the best sort of agreements for this group to make?
What is my definition of morality?
What is your definition of morality?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. It's what isn't? I mean, shoot, I don't remember the exact words you used. It's sort of what sort of.
Well, you don't have to use the same words. I mean, you could just. I mean, I'm putting forward a concept here.
Yeah. What sort of agreement should individual or like people in a group make when you're formulating a group? Like, what sort of decision should you make? I guess that's not the. I don't know the exact words you use now.
You're pretty close. I mean.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not. I pretty much understand your position. Your position is like there is this trade-off in any kind of moral statements. Like any action that you proceed with, there's like 4 different outcomes for. Like an action could be good for you and good for your team. It could be good for your team and not good for you, that's like selflessness, right? If you're doing something that's not good for you but good for your team, that's a selfless act, right?
Yep. So, and I would say that's not moral.
Okay, exactly. So the soldier that jumps on the hand grenade and saves his 20 platoon mates is doing an immoral act, is what you're saying.
That's actually that's an interesting one because.
Well, that's basically what you're saying. And objectivism does not facilitate that ability. And I'm saying that 20 guys with any guy willing to jump on the grenade for any other guy is going to outcompete 20 guys who are going to run from the grenade, and it's going to kill all 20 of them. So, but let me continue on the two. Let me continue real quick here on the 2 other points. Okay. There's good for you. Good for the group, that's an easy decision to make, right? Good for the group, not good for you, that's not so good. Good for you, not good for the group, that's a decision you can make. And not good for you and not good for the group, that's an easy decision, because why would you do anything that's not good for you and not good for your group? But where we run into trouble is where things are good for you and not good for the group. That's where selfishness needs to be suppressed in order to make society possible. Most people will do what's good for them and not good for the group. It's why we run into all these problems in politics and in ethics. And if your moral system doesn't have a way to grapple with those settings of society, then what are we talking about here? You don't really have a moral system. And your moral system is not even willing to acknowledge that there are these four states. You're basically saying really all that matters is the individual. There's no situation where the individual's well-being comes at the cost of the group. You're saying that situation doesn't exist, much less do I have an explanation for how to proceed in those situations. So I'll let you go ahead and respond.
Yeah. I would say that there's no conflicts of interest among rational men. I mean, that's an argument.
Okay, so you're just saying that it doesn't exist. Okay, I got you.
I mean, like there can be like group whims that aren't fulfilled. Like if a bunch of people feel a certain way that they feel that this would be in their best interest, then and they want to sacrifice an individual for that's generally not in the best interest. Actually, I would argue. Now to the soldier and the hand grenade one, that's a really difficult one because the whole idea of you as a soldier, imagine being in that situation. Would you be willing to live afterwards knowing that the blood of 20 other people that you lived with, like that blood is on your hands for not doing that, for not jumping on that grenade?
Regardless of the outcome, I mean, there's plenty of ways that we can rationalize it. I'm asking you if your moral system, like you've already stated that your moral system would make that immoral. Like now you're trying to make it moral because your moral intuitions seem to realize that selfishness is bad.
No, I don't know if that's actually not in your self-interest. That's what I would say.
So you're saying it's in your self-interest to be the guy that jumps on the grenade?
Yes.
That seems. How is that not just rationalizing?
I mean, no. That's what I explained. Like it's if like there's some things that you would rather die for than to live without. That is definitely the case. Like a spouse. Imagine that you have a loved one, someone that you love so much, and then they're gonna die.
Yeah,
and
that's what selflessness is.
And you can prevent that. No, but I would say that's fundamentally not selfless. That's in your self-interest. Because imagine if you're that person, you let that value slip away from you. You are not willing to put your life on the line to do that. You could not live like that afterward. There is no rational man.
You cannot sit here and claim to be one of the most rational people on the earth and tell me that it is rationally in your self-interest to be the guy that jumps on the grenade. Like that. How is that rational? That is the most irrational thing I've ever heard. It's in my self-interest. It's in my self-interest to be the guy that jumps on the grenade.
Yeah, because of the fact that you have to defend the values that you want to hold. Like you ought to defend the values that you ought to hold.
So you're saying you're saying if it's in everyone's self-interest to jump on the grenade, why don't they all jump on the grenade? Is that what you're saying, that they should all jump on the grenade? I guess maybe that happens, but
I don't know. I don't know the right answer to that situation, and that's a really, really fucking difficult situation.
What's a moral question?
Thing. If I'm an individual and I don't jump on it, I'm gonna die anyways. And like, would I rather die and save the lives of all these people that I'm friends with, or would I rather just die with all the rest of them?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but I mean, that's fun. That's not what ethics is about either. Ethics is about my life. I'm never going to be in the I'm never going to be in the situation where I have to decide. I'm never like I'm not. I don't think ethics is about these lifeboat scenarios. I'm living my life. I don't think I'm ever going to have to be in that situation where I have to decide whether or not to jump on a grenade, or if I'm going to have to decide whether or not to sacrifice my life for my values. But I mean, there are people who are in that, like, modern society is possible because there are people in that situation every single day. They're like police officers. There's like firefighters. There's like soldiers. There are people in that situation every single day that make our lives where we don't have to make those decisions possible. I mean, like without,
I know.
If they all become objectivists, the military no longer exists.
No, because it's you know that principle, like, where I'd rather, oh shit, I'm so bad at quotes. But there's that principle of like I would rather die free than live in chains, or whatever the quote is. I think, do you know what the one I'm talking about? Yeah. Like that's fundamentally selfish. I would rather die defending freedom than live as a slave for the rest of my life. And it's the same principle with all those other general like concepts of values. Like if It's the same thing with like if your spouse is about to get run over by a bus or some shit. Like you're gonna jump out, push her out of the way, get run over, and you could die. But it's better to
Well, I don't know. If you're an objectivist and you're losing interest in her, you might just let the bus hit her.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, you know, you got to do the profit and loss on it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, I'm not going to do it for some stranger who I don't have no idea about. Like, I mean that, like, think about what that would mean if it was.
Well,
like,
I'm only kidding around anyway, but
yeah. No, for sure. Sorry.
This has been a fascinating conversation. I'll let you. Do you want to go ahead and pitch your channel? Let everyone know what your channel is before I hit stop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if any of you guys are interested in hearing more about objectivism and learning more about this philosophy, go down, subscribe to my channel. Also go look up the Ayn Rand Institute, read Atlas Shrugged, read The Fountainhead actually first. Fountainhead is amazing. I'm one of the rare objectivists who likes The Fountainhead more than Atlas Shrugged. I love Atlas Shrugged, but I like The Fountainhead more. People are going to crucify me.
Don't see the movie because the movie is awful. I think they must have been all objectivists on that movie because everyone, like, there was no selfless people working towards making a good movie. They were all working for their own selfish interests. Yeah.
I would say they all sacrificed their values in making that video.
All right, I'll go ahead and end it there. Thanks for having this conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.